Clara Reynolds had always felt distant from her family's past, especially her grandfather, Thomas Reynolds, a man she barely knew. Her childhood memories of him were few, a stern figure in a dusty shop filled with the constant ticking of clocks, whose presence always seemed both comforting and unsettling. When she received the unexpected news that Thomas had passed away, leaving her his old clock shop in the fog-shrouded town of Eldridge, Clara felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The shop, located on a narrow cobblestone street, seemed frozen in time, its wooden floors creaking under the weight of countless clocks, each with its own story, each with its own rhythm. Upon entering, Clara was immediately struck by the overwhelming scent of polished wood, brass, and old paper. The shop was a labyrinth of clocks, grandfather clocks that reached toward the ceiling, delicate mantel clocks with intricate carvings, and pocket watches carefully displayed in glass cases. Yet, despite the apparent order, there was a sense of unease, a subtle irregularity in the ticking, as if the clocks were whispering secrets she could not yet understand. In the center of the room sat her grandfather's workbench, cluttered with tools, gears, and partially assembled timepieces. It was here that she found the letter, neatly folded and sealed with a wax emblem she had never seen before. The letter was addressed to her, written in Thomas's meticulous handwriting. It began with a simple greeting, yet the words quickly revealed a deeper purpose. Thomas spoke of a secret he had guarded his entire life, a responsibility that had now passed to Clara. He hinted at her role in preserving something valuable, something that could change how one understood time itself. The letter was both a challenge and a reassurance, urging her to explore the shop, to investigate the drawers, cabinets, and hidden compartments, and to trust her instincts. Clara felt a shiver of excitement mixed with fear. The notion that her grandfather had led a life filled with mysteries she had never imagined was both exhilarating and intimidating. As Clara explored further, she began to notice unusual phenomena. Clocks that should have stopped years ago were ticking once more. A small drawer rattled even though it was locked. At first, she dismissed these occurrences as tricks of her imagination or the natural settling of an old building. But the more she investigated, the more she sensed that the shop held secrets beyond mere craftsmanship. There was a rhythm to the ticking, a pattern she could not yet comprehend that seemed almost deliberate, as if the clocks themselves were trying to communicate with her. By the end of the day, Clara had made a tentative decision. She would not immediately sell the shop or turn away from this inheritance. There was something compelling here, a story her grandfather had left behind that she was determined to uncover. The first step had been taken, and though she did not yet understand the full scope of the mystery, she felt an inexplicable connection to the man she had barely known. It was no longer merely a relic of the past, it was an invitation, a doorway into a world of secrets and responsibilities that Clara was only beginning to grasp. In Part 1, the story establishes Clara's character and sets the stage for the supernatural mystery that will unfold. The inherited workshop is not just a physical space, marking the start of Clara's transformative journey. Clara Reynolds could not shake the feeling that something extraordinary lingered within its walls. The unusual ticking of certain clocks and the curious arrangement of the tools on Thomas Reynolds' workbench all hinted at a deeper mystery. As Clara wandered among the shelves of antique timepieces, that she discovered the first truly remarkable clue, a small, intricately designed pocket watch tucked beneath a velvet cloth in an unmarked drawer. The pocket watch was unlike any she had ever seen. Its surface was engraved with patterns that seemed almost alive, swirling in delicate loops that caught the flickering candlelight in unusual ways. The hands of the watch moved erratically, sometimes pausing, sometimes reversing. Clara hesitated before touching it. As her fingers brushed against the cool metal, she saw an image of her grandfather, not as the old man she remembered, but as a younger man working feverishly at the same workbench she now stood before. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Clara began to experiment with the pocket watch. She discovered that by winding it in a certain way, she could trigger these flashes of the past. Each vision revealed snippets of her grandfather's secret life. His careful adjustments to clocks that seemed ordinary but were in fact part of a larger, inexplicable mechanism, and his hushed conversations with people who did not appear in the town's history. Through these visions, Clara realized that Thomas Reynolds was no ordinary clockmaker. He had been something extraordinary, a timekeeper, someone capable of manipulating short bursts of time or observing moments from the past with startling clarity. The discovery both thrilled and frightened Clara. This secret was no longer just her grandfather's, it had become hers. The mysterious pocket watch was more than a keepsake. Clara understood that to uncover the full extent of her grandfather's life and the legacy he had left behind, she would need to learn how to use the watch, how to control it, and how to understand the strange signals that the clocks in the shop seemed to send her. Complicating matters, Clara began noticing subtle changes in the shop's environment. Clocks would occasionally align in impossible synchrony. The air would thrum with a faint vibration when the watch was near certain timepieces, and she sometimes felt the unmistakable sensation of being observed. These occurrences hinted that she was not alone in her quest, adding urgency to her need to uncover the truth. She had become an active participant in a mystery that intertwined time, memory, and responsibility, a clue that promised deeper revelations and set her on a path filled with wonder, danger, and self-discovery. By the time Clara Reynolds entered the third day of exploring her grandfather's clock shop, the initial thrill of discovery had shifted into a determined curiosity. The pocket watch, with its erratic movements and glimpses into the past, had already revealed more than she could have imagined about Thomas Reynolds' secret life. Now, she needed to make sense of these fragments and understand what role she was meant to play in a mystery that stretched far beyond the walls of the shop. Clara began with her grandfather's journals, a series of leather-bound volumes stacked haphazardly on a high shelf. Each journal was filled with meticulous notes about clockmaking, sketches of gears, and strange symbols she could not immediately decipher. But as she read further, she discovered entries that hinted at something extraordinary, maps of the town with markings that did not correspond to streets or buildings, but rather to specific times of day. Each location seemed tied to particular moments, as if her grandfather had recorded events that transcended ordinary chronology. She realized that these maps were clues, and that the clocks in the shop combined with the pocket watch were part of a much larger system, one that had allowed her grandfather to observe and perhaps even influence moments in time. Determined to follow the clues, Clara began visiting the locations marked on the maps. At first, they seemed mundane. An old fountain in the town square, a forgotten library basement, and a series of locked gates along the outskirts of Eldridge. Yet, each place held subtle hints of her grandfather's presence, a carefully hidden symbol, a loose brick, a clock face embedded in a wall that guided her deeper into the mystery. It became clear that Thomas had been creating a network, a trail meant for someone to follow after his death. And now, that someone was Clara. As she pieced together these clues, Clara also noticed signs that she was not alone in her quest. Shadows flitted at the edges of her vision. Distant footsteps echoed in empty streets, and occasionally she would find objects moved or rearranged in ways that suggested another person had been at the locations before her. Someone else knew about the pocket watch and the hidden network her grandfather had left behind. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Her journey was no longer just about discovery or curiosity. There was an element of danger, a rival who might seek to misuse the knowledge her grandfather had carefully safeguarded. Despite her fear, Clara felt a growing sense of purpose. She began experimenting with the pocket watch in these new locations, attempting to synchronize it with the hidden mechanisms her grandfather had set up. At times, she could briefly glimpse moments in the past, her grandfather leaving messages, arranging clocks in cryptic patterns, or confronting individuals who had no reason to appear in historical records. These visions, though fleeting, strengthened her resolve and sharpened her intuition. Clara realized that the key to understanding her grandfather's secret lay not only in observing the past, but in learning how to navigate the intricate relationship between time, memory, and consequence. By the end of Part 3, Clara had transformed from a curious heir into an active participant in a complex puzzle. She had begun to decode her grandfather's intentions, uncover the hidden network within Eldridge, and recognize the shadowy presence tracking her every move. The stakes were higher now. She had both a responsibility to protect her grandfather's legacy and a pressing need to outsmart an unknown adversary. This stage of the story marked the transition from discovery to action, setting the stage for Clara's deeper involvement in a world of secrets, dangers, and temporal mysteries. Clara Reynolds had been following her grandfather's intricate clues for days, venturing through hidden corners of Eldridge and piecing together the strange network of clocks, symbols, and maps he had left behind. Yet, nothing could have prepared her for the revelation she was about to encounter. While investigating an abandoned section of the town library, Clara discovered a hidden door behind a massive dust-covered bookshelf. The door was carved with the same swirling patterns she had seen on her grandfather's pocket watch. Hesitant but determined, she pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. As she cautiously stepped inside, the air seemed charged with an almost electric tension, as though the space itself were aware of her presence. At the bottom of the staircase, Clara found herself in a cavernous chamber lined with clocks of every imaginable shape and size. In the center of the room stood a group of individuals, all dressed in dark, practical clothing, their faces partially obscured by shadows. They were gathered around a massive clock embedded in the floor, its hands moving in impossible directions, defying ordinary logic. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure with piercing eyes, and introduced herself as Ilara, a senior member of the Time Keepers, a secret society dedicated to guarding the flow of time and protecting its mysteries from those who would exploit them. Through cautious conversation, Clara learned that her grandfather had been one of the society's most skilled members. He had worked to create mechanisms and records that allowed for glimpses into the past, tools meant for observation and guidance rather than manipulation. The society had remained hidden for generations, carefully monitoring temporal anomalies and ensuring that knowledge of time as deeper secrets did not fall into the wrong hands. Clara's discovery of the pocket watch and the maps signaled that she was now ready to join this hidden world, but it also alerted the society to the presence of an adversary who had been tracking her movements. Ilara explained that the shadowy figure Clara had sensed was a rogue time manipulator, someone who sought to harness temporal knowledge for selfish purposes. This individual had already caused minor disruptions in Eldridge, and if left unchecked, could unleash consequences far beyond the town itself. Clara realized the gravity of the situation. Her grandfather's carefully concealed work was not just a family secret, it was a critical safeguard against misuse of time itself. The society warned her that she would need to act quickly, both to protect the pocket watch and to understand the broader responsibilities her grandfather had entrusted to her. The revelation forced Clara to confront her own doubts and fears. She had already been through disorienting experiences with the pocket watch, but joining the society meant stepping fully into a world where the rules of time were flexible and consequences could be unpredictable. She began rigorous training under the society's guidance, learning to read the subtle signs in clocks, manipulate brief bursts of temporal energy, and understand the hidden language of symbols her grandfather had left behind. These lessons were challenging, sometimes overwhelming, but Clara found herself rising to the occasion, fueled by both curiosity and a sense of duty. By the end of Part 4, Clara had become more than a seeker of mysteries, she had become a fledgling guardian of time. She understood that the pocket watch was not merely a tool, but a responsibility, and that her actions could influence events in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. The stage was now set for a high-stakes confrontation. Clara would need to confront the rogue time manipulator, protect her grandfather's legacy, and navigate the complex web of the secret society. This part of the story expanded the world, introduced powerful allies and dangerous enemies, and raised the stakes dramatically, marking a turning point in Clara's journey from curiosity to courage. By the time Clara Reynolds reached this stage of her journey, the stakes had never been higher. Her exploration of her grandfather's shop, the discovery of the mysterious pocket watch, and her introduction to the secret society of timekeepers had all led to a critical moment. She was now facing an adversary who was determined to seize the power her grandfather had protected for decades. The rogue time manipulator, a shadowy figure, whose presence she had felt since her first experiments with the pocket watch, had grown more aggressive, leaving traces of disruption throughout Eldridge. Minor temporal anomalies had begun affecting the town. Clocks running backward, objects appearing in places they shouldn't, and fleeting visions of events that had never occurred. Clara understood that this was no longer a puzzle to be solved at leisure. It was a race, and failure could have consequences far beyond her own safety. The climax of this part centers on the hidden chamber in the town's clock tower, a location her grandfather had marked on his secret maps. This chamber housed his most powerful creation, a large, intricate timepiece capable of observing or even subtly influencing significant moments in time. Clara had spent days deciphering the clues that led to this place, learning to synchronize her pocket watch with the hidden mechanisms her grandfather had embedded in the tower. As she ascended the spiraling staircase, each step seemed to echo with tension, the rhythmic ticking of the clocks growing louder, almost sentient, as though warning her of the confrontation ahead. At the top, Clara encountered her adversary for the first time face to face. The rogue manipulator was calm, confident, and clearly familiar with the workings of the tower. He attempted to seize the main timepiece, believing that its power could grant him control over temporal events for personal gain. Clara's training with the timekeepers and her own experimentation with the pocket watch were put to the ultimate test. She had to think quickly, using both ingenuity and her growing understanding of temporal mechanics to anticipate his moves. Every second counted, and the slightest misstep could allow him to wrest control of the device. The confrontation itself was a tense interplay of strategy, wit, and manipulation of time. Clara used brief bursts of temporal distortion to evade the manipulator's attacks, creating short loops and shifts that disoriented him. At the same time, she relied on her knowledge of the tower's hidden mechanisms, trapdoors, hidden levers, and cleverly positioned clocks to create advantages. It was a battle not just of physical skill, but of intellect and timing, forcing Clara to combine all her grandfather's lessons with her own instincts. Ultimately, Clara succeeded in outsmarting the rogue manipulator, securing the timepiece, and neutralizing the immediate threat. The victory was hard-earned, leaving her physically exhausted but mentally resolute. She realized that the battle was not just about the artifact itself, but about the responsibility it represented. Her grandfather's legacy was now firmly in her hands, and the experience had transformed her from a curious observer into a capable guardian of time. Part 5 serves as the story's high-stakes turning point. It combines suspense, action, and emotional growth, showing Clara's development as a character who embraces her grandfather's legacy while asserting her own courage and ingenuity. The resolution of the confrontation sets the stage for the final part, where Clara must come to terms with her role as a protector of time and consider how she will continue the work her grandfather began. After the harrowing confrontation in the clock tower, Clara Reynolds finally had a moment to breathe. The rogue time manipulator had been thwarted, the powerful timepiece secured, and the immediate danger to Eldridge neutralized. Yet there was no time for complacency. Clara understood that the responsibility her grandfather had entrusted to her was far greater than simply safeguarding a magical device. It was about preserving the integrity of time itself and continuing a legacy built on careful vigilance, wisdom, and moral responsibility. The weight of this realization settled heavily on her shoulders, but Clara also felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Returning to her grandfather's shop, Clara began the painstaking task of cataloging his work. Each clock, each journal, and every hidden compartment contained fragments of his knowledge. She meticulously organized the journals, noting symbols, diagrams, and coded instructions that had guided her through the mystery. Through this process, Clara gained a deeper understanding of her grandfather's meticulous life. Thomas Reynolds had not simply been a skilled clockmaker. He had been a guardian of temporal knowledge, balancing the ordinary rhythms of life with a hidden responsibility few could comprehend. The more she studied, the more Clara realized that her journey was not just about power or discovery, it was about stewardship. Clara also took steps to strengthen her connection with the secret society of timekeepers. The society had been impressed by her courage, ingenuity, and quick thinking during the confrontation in the clock tower, and they recognized her as a capable guardian. Under their guidance, she learned to refine her abilities with the pocket watch and other temporal tools, understanding the subtle ways in which time could be observed, interpreted, and preserved without causing harm. Clara's training now became part of her daily life, a balance between learning and reflection, ensuring that she could maintain control over her newfound responsibilities. Emotionally, Clara experienced profound growth. The journey had forced her to confront fears, doubts, and insecurities she hadn't known she possessed. She had stepped into a world that defied conventional understanding, faced real danger, and emerged victorious. Through it all, she discovered resilience, courage, and a sense of identity rooted not only in her grandfather's legacy, but also in her own choices. Clara's relationship with her past had shifted from distant curiosity to active engagement, and she now felt connected to her family's history in a way that was empowering rather than intimidating. In practical terms, Clara decided to continue operating the clock shop, but with a new purpose. The shop was no longer just a place of business. It was a hub of knowledge, a sanctuary for temporal artifacts, and a center for training future guardians if needed. She documented her grandfather's methods and her own discoveries, creating a record for future generations of timekeepers. Yet she also allowed herself small joys, maintaining the shop's charm and welcoming visitors, subtly blending the ordinary and extraordinary. By the end of Part 6, Clara had fully embraced her role as a guardian of time. The rogue manipulator's threat had been neutralized, but more importantly, Clara had internalized the values and responsibilities her grandfather had passed down. The story concludes with a sense of closure and empowerment. Clara is no longer merely an heir to a mysterious legacy, she is its active custodian, prepared to navigate future challenges with intelligence, courage, and compassion. The ending leaves the door open for new adventures, hinting that while the immediate threat is gone, the world of temporal mysteries is vast, and Clara's journey as a guardian has only just begun.